I'm here with Zach, Zach van Heerden, that's been around in football in the background scenes, but he's done a lot of fixing of us. But let Zach tell you more of what he does and who he is. Zach, how are you?
Thanks for having me, Morgan. Good to be here.
Yeah. Tell me, I've known you for a while. We had our fights. I won't tell the people about our fights off the field, but yeah, you've been in football for 3 decades, close to. So just tell us, where have you been and what was your roles in football?
Well, I grew up in football. My stepdad was a footballer. I played for Arcadia Shepherds and Sundowns back in the day, long time ago, in the 80s, and went on to coaching. And while I was studying, I was doing science and human movement and all that kind of thing. And he needed someone to help him at Wits University back in the day, and that's how I got into the game in terms of doing the science and the medical and the fitness and all that kind of thing. So I've seen a lot, and that was before the PSL. It was still when the NSL used to run during winter. It was a completely different scenario. And there were no fitness trainers and there were no physios or doctors. It was an interesting time. So it's amazing to see how the game has developed and become more professional and more organized. Now, some of the things we take for granted, like you're saying, you had a fitness trainer, and when you've got a problem downstairs or upstairs, there's a lot that can be done for you by the club and by the practitioners. In those days, go home and sort yourself out, come back when you're ready.
Sure. And how many teams were you over the 25 years, and how many teams have you been with or tried to improve their fitness and all the other things? How many teams have you been with?
Well, more clubs than Tiger Woods. Like I said, I started off with Wits University. I played there as a youngster. I was with the club for 22 years, so from 1989 to 2011. When I left in 2011, I'd been obviously involved in the medical and the sports science. And from there, I went to Swallows for a little bit with Gordon Iggesund, inspirational man to work with. I'd been a little bit with Portugal as well, with their national team. The first time we got together was with Bafana. That was after the World Cup here. Spent 2-3 years there. Gordon again, and with Pitso. Pitso took me to Sundowns for a bit. We won a title there. I took a break from football, and you and me reunited at Supersport for another trophy or two.
Yeah. Talking about you being with Portugal, I mean, that must have been one of the epic moments in your 25 years of being in football, teams to work with. And take us through how it came about that you went to work with such a big powerhouse in Europe.
Well, I must thank Roger de Saar, first of all. I was at Bidvest Wits with him at the time, and he's very good friends with Carlos Queiroz, who was the coach. I'd met Carlos previously, way back when Carlos was part of the Bafana setup, 2001, 2002. So he knew me from those days. And then when Portugal qualified to come out here, he wanted to know a little bit more about the altitude and the conditions and how to prepare players, and that sort of just grew into a sort of a full-time role with the team for about a year and a bit, just helping to prepare for the World Cup and planning the camps and knowing local conditions, because if you're playing in that World Cup, it was Joburg, Cape Town, Durban, Joburg. There's a lot of changes in conditions. With modern football, those are considerations. How do you get the most out of your player every single game, and then knowing that they're playing in environments that are not the same as what they're used to. So that's sort of how it happened. But it was a very bittersweet moment, to be honest, because it was great to be part of the Portugal setup. The team were ranked 3rd in the world at that stage. Ronaldo, Deco, Pepe, players of that caliber, Ricardo Carvalho, Champions League winners, players like Nani from Manchester United, and I think there were 5 players from Chelsea. It was a powerhouse team. But at the end of the day, it was me watching Bafana get knocked out of the World Cup and not being part of a World Cup in my own country. As a World Cup fan of the World Cup, it's like one of the highlights of my life is every 4 years there's a World Cup, and for a month you sit and watch football and absorb the atmosphere. And I missed it. I missed the entire World Cup here. And I never got to blow up a vuvuzela. I never got allowed out of a hotel until Portugal knocked out. And I remember watching that game against France and thinking, why am I with Portugal when I could be with Bafana? And luckily for me, a few years later it did happen. I got to spend a bit of time with my own national team.
So you were the only South African to make it to the quarterfinals in the World Cup 2010?
No, there were 3 of us. It was me, it was Roger de Saar.
Yeah.
He was a part of the technical and sort of scouting department, and there was a colleague of mine who helped me out with the strength and conditioning and stuff like that. Also a local guy, understood the conditions better how to do things here.
And then your stint with Bafana, I mean, must have been comparing it to Portugal and doing it for your own country. What is the difference, and how was the working conditions in terms of professionalism and all the other smaller things?
Some hard questions there. I mean, Portugal and the European teams, I mean, they've been doing it for so much longer. I mean, you look at these national teams, they've been around since the 1930s and the 1920s. So they've got a lot of experience, and they've got a lot of systems in place, and the entire country and the entire league is geared towards the national team doing well. Whereas in South Africa, we're new to this thing. We've been doing it for, 20, 25 years maybe. Sounds like a long time, but in football it passes very, very quickly. So the development structures are different, the recruitment of players is different, the selection of players is different, the management style is completely different as well. There's things that work better maybe, but there's things that don't work as well. It's very hard to compare them. I mean, just with experience, having been around Europe and that sort of qualifying routines, it's not difficult. You fly a couple of hours, it's an hour and a half to Italy and back. It's not a problem. When you play, as AFCON qualifiers, when you're flying to Paris and then back to Morocco, or flying to places like Sierra Leone and Niger and Sudan, where there's no facilities. From change rooms to hotels to everything that you need, the food and that kind of thing. It's a completely different challenge compared to what happens in Europe. So it's very difficult to compare, or maybe not right to compare the two styles of management, because the challenges are completely different.
True. So, not saying that we're comparing, but we'd like to obviously up our game. But what do you think, as the national team, as Bafana, and the European as their national teams, what do we need? Where do we need to improve?
I think it's about professionalism generally. And I'm not having a go at SAFA at any level, but the reality is in Europe, every person who's got their job, they're fully qualified to do their job. They would have studied or got some sort of certification, or they would have served a long apprenticeship with whoever did the job before them. So they know the job, inside out. I mean, just a simple thing, with Portugal, is that when you get your kit bag every day, you get a box of clean kit. In that box, there's a clean pair of socks in the packet, and a clean pair of underpants in the packet. I don't know if it comes from Nike or whoever the sponsor is, but that's the difference. That's the difference between teams of that level. They take care of every single detail. I think you said previously in an interview where the small details predict the success. And at teams at that level, that's what they do. It's every small detail. It's the condition of the shoelaces, make the boot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas, sometimes when you're not as professional in everything that you do, the small little things fall away, and that can lead to a bit of disaster along the way.
Yeah. I mean, for me, as a person that has worked with you, I mean, first when you came in, I never knew a lot of teams had sports science, but you a guy that has 25 years experience, and you know what you're doing, and you've improved me, not because you're sitting here, but you improved me in such a way where mentally I can actually go and do exercises on my own. But before, it was very sluggish. I was very hesitant to do. But you explain it to the finer detail, and you tell us how it will help us in the future. And for me, I never got the opportunity to say thank you for assisting me to grow in my career. It's the end of my career now, but I didn't get the opportunity to say thank you, and I'd like to apologize publicly for disputing anything that you have tried to give us in a football structure. But thank you very much for assisting me to grow as a footballer, and may you continue to assist other youngsters that come up and may want to become Ronaldos and bigger, or Morgan Goulds and bigger. So I think just going back to saying, your job is very important, and I appreciate and I understand. I hope all the other kids that come into the spaces that we are as footballers don't fight the system. The system's there to improve you, and I've learned a lot from you. So thank you very much, Zach.
It's a pleasure, and it's also a privilege. I mean, the other thing for me, I understand with football is it's one of those games where you're here today, gone tomorrow. You work with a group of players, and you're almost like family. And 2 days later, players move to another club. They're no longer part of your family. They're still part of your family in your heart, but the circumstances change very quickly. And as a professional, you could be with this team now, and 2 days later you've moved to another club or you've gone to the national team. So that family gets pulled apart very, very quickly. So there is that break in relationship. It's very, very normal. You have to deal with it. Luckily, I'm very used to it. Like I said, every player that I work with, and that's my mindset on life, is it's a privilege to have worked with someone like you. Just having worked with the Decos and Ronaldos and all of them, all the national team players I worked with, it was always a privilege to work with them. Knowing I would take that experience forward, and when I have the opportunity to work with the next 12 or 13 or 14-year-old who's going to go there, that I've learned from that player how to make them even better. I mean, that's my life's journey. So, like I said, it's an absolute pleasure, and likewise from my side to work with the odd player in South Africa who's very professional. You were one of those. It's players like you that inspire people like me to keep doing it and keep doing it better and keep looking for the solutions. Because the reality is, in any team, you have those very professional players, and you've got other players who don't do as much. So you have to learn to balance it. It can be quite energy sapping.
Yeah, that's actually a very good one that you raised. Because you have to deal with so many players. Like, how do you really balance getting more the professional mindset people to the ones that are very talented and not wanting to do the work off the field, which is obviously the gym strength work, conditioning. How do you strike a balance between those two?
It's very difficult. I mean, the reality is, you look at any team you're dealing with sometimes. I mean, I've worked with a squad where I think we had, I won't say which club. I remember arriving for pre-season, I think we had 73 players or 83 players, I couldn't remember counting. We had so many players that arrived for pre-season. These had come back from loan, and these were about to be on loan. It was and you remember that every one of those players are individuals. They have their own personalities. There's no carbon copies. So you have to treat every player as an individual, and you've got to understand their individual strengths and weaknesses, the way they like to train, the way they don't like to train, things they'll do, things they won't do. And I've worked with some very interesting and very tricky players across the years, and you've got to workhorses, workaholics like yourself, who you've always taken the responsibility to look after yourself and be in as good condition as possible. I think that's one of your secrets, and a lot of people you learn from. You need to come back from double Achilles ruptures plus all the other injuries you've had. I mean, football is a game of injuries.
Yeah.
For you to come back from that, not just physically but psychologically as well, it's a testament to how professional you are and how much hard work you're willing to put in. But there are many players who don't have that work ethic, don't have that viewpoint on life, or that sort of that driving energy behind them. So you've got to find different ways of doing it. And with you, I know, I'll give you a piece of paper, go to the gym, you're going to do it. I wouldn't have to ask twice. I don't even have to look, I don't have to check. Other players, I would have to have my arm around the shoulders 24/7 for 6 or 7 weeks. And I worked with some players where the rehab process has gone on for almost 2 years. To keep them going day after day after day, to keep them fit, and they sort of get ready, and then the coach doesn't play them. It's difficult, and they sit on the bench, and they sit on the bench, and they sit on the bench, and when I'm going to get my opportunity, I've been doing all this hard work, I'm ready, but the coach isn't ready for them, or the circumstances aren't ready for them. You're pushing to win the league, or you're trying to fight relegation, or trying to qualify for the top 8. It's not the time to put a player of unknown capacity into the kitchen. It's difficult. So. But that's what the job is. That's the job that I chose. That's what I do. Is what I love. I like to see the success. I like to work with a big group of players, different athletes, and keep pushing. I'm not giving them my knowledge. I'm giving them the knowledge. The knowledge doesn't come from me. The knowledge comes from all over the world. Find those best ways of doing things and give. And the more you give, and the more you promote, and the more you make people comfortable with their bodies and the training, understanding how important it is, the better they're going to perform. And the reality is, a lot of people come back to me and say, thank you for what you did for me. Like you said, when you're in the heat of the moment, and we had arguments at Bafana and at Supersport, but at times about training methods, and you understand, with people like me, we're balancing. We're balancing what's good for you, but also what the coach wants.
Yeah.
That's the reality. The coach wants you to suffer a bit. Sometimes I might disagree, but it needs to be done, because at the end of the day, that management team is important. That team has to come and say, this is what we're doing to make you a better group on the field. So sometimes things aren't always as perfect as you as a player would like them to be. But at the end of the day is, how do we keep the group moving forward? How do we make you stronger players and get through a whole season? Sometimes also like see who's who. A coach is sometimes sitting with a squad of 25, wants to pick 11.
Yeah.
Do the 10K run, first 11 come home, are probably the first 11 to start the game, but for the position. So, so it's a very, very, very tricky job. So, not anybody can do it. That's the reality. You need to be educated, and also you need to understand football. That's the big one. A lot of people want to get into football, but I had the fortunate experience of, I never played at a high level myself, but I grew up in a football environment. So growing up in a football environment, you learn about footballers. It's not that you only see them on the training field. I used to see them in my house. They used to come visit my dad for, to do the contract negotiation on the kitchen table and all kinds of things. And I spent time in the change room. I spent time at training. So you get to know footballers. If you take that knowledge and couple it with the science, that's what makes the difference. That's how you get the most out of people.
Oh, no, that's very interesting to know, Zach. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences. And for the people that don't know, I call him the science guru. So you heard it from the science guru himself. It goes hand in hand, football and science. It's actually part of the new way of life now, actually. So if you have a science guru in your team, you definitely will become a better player. Thank you for being with us, Zach, and sharing your great story and all the things you've been through.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.